In the life and death part of this exam, there is more than likely going to be something about different viewpoints about death, whether it's a question about heaven, hell, purgatory, resurrection, or a 15 marker like we've got here with the statement, death is not the end. You're going to need to be strong in your sources of wisdom and authority and different viewpoints on, as the unit's called, life after death. Now, this one, they've given it to us on this paper in a 15 marker, but the points that we are going to make are valid across the 5s and the 8s as well. Again, if you want to see us answer a full version of this, that video is there for you. We'll put a link at the end. But for now, here are just some of the thoughts that would go through our heads. So first up, on a question like this, it is asking us for more than one point of view. It doesn't state there has to be an atheist point of view, and you do need to read the statement carefully because sometimes an atheist point of view is not relevant to the particular statement. In this case, we can use one, and I'll show you how to do that. But first and foremost, we would probably always advise give the Catholic view to that statement. This is an applied Catholic theology paper, so go in strong with a Catholic paragraph. What would the Catholic response to that statement be? So in this one, you would particularly be talking about eternal life. You'd be talking about, for Catholics, death is not the end because of the promise of eternal life. You would be talking about the soul, views on the soul in the Catholic Church being sent to heaven, hell, or purgatory. Remember, purgatory is that specific Catholic viewpoint. You might want to talk about the fact that heaven, according to the Catechism, is eternal union with God. You might want to talk about the fact that hell is eternal separation. On purgatory, purification. Always linking your answer back to the question that death is not the end. Another source of evidence, Jesus talked about the concept of heaven and hell when he gave us the story of the rich man and Lazarus. The idea that the rich man went to hell and Lazarus, who had nothing in this life, went to heaven. So the rich man and Lazarus would be a great source of evidence in this question. Just to point out, when I spelt Lazarus wrong, this 15-mark question carries the spag marks as well, so I would be paying attention to my paragraphs, my spellings in this one. Remember, in the rich man and Lazarus, Lazarus is comforted in heaven, the rich man suffers in hell, showing actions in this life. Catholics believe that actions in this life affect eternal destiny. Now, I would then link my paragraph back to the statement, death is not the end, saying something like this reinforces the Catholic view that death is a transition, not the end. Death is a change in life, not the end in life. Now, there's some Catholic points for you. I would then write a second paragraph, starting it with the word however, to try and get some evaluatory language into my answer to move into the bigger marks. And at this one, I can use a non-religious viewpoint. It is relevant in this question, in this statement. So if you are on a 15 marker and you need some non-religious points, I could talk about atheists and humanists reject the idea of an afterlife. Atheists reject afterlife. Believing that death marks the end of existence. However, we could talk about in that instance that we live on in the memories of others. Our influence, or through children, biological legacy. Biological legacy. And you could also talk about how some people believe that life after death is quite simply a psychological comfort. Psychological comfort to help those that are left. There are another option that's not specifically non-religious, but an alternative view, again, that's not a religious view necessarily. You could talk about some people believe in paranormal, like ghosts or reincarnation. That would imply that death is not the end. So that would actually support the statement, reincarnation. We've studied a case of a young boy called James Leiniger, who believed that he had fought in World War II. James Leiniger. So you could talk all about that. Now, I would then pop myself back onto another Christian view. I'm just going to flick my page over. Other Christian beliefs. Christian beliefs. We could use the resurrection. So we could talk about Jesus's resurrection. And you could use something like on the other hand to start this paragraph. Again, drop that language in. On the other hand, we could talk about Jesus's resurrection, proving that death is not the end. The idea that his raising from the dead shows that life continues. We've got St. Paul, who is our main man to quote here. He says, death is not the end of life, but change in life. So death is not the end, but a change. St. Paul also spoke about how if Christ has not been raised, faith is futile. Being raised, faith is futile, meaning that if you don't believe that Jesus resurrected, your faith's pointless. A great quote to use there, and that highlights how central the belief in life after death is to Christian faith. Again, pulling it back to the statement. Now, I have actually saved a big point till the end for this one, because then I would try and throw a conclusion on. Again, another great source of evidence for this idea of heaven, for the soul, for life after death, for resurrection. Any question on those topics, you could use the fact that Jesus spoke to the criminal on the cross. And he promised him a life after death when he was on the cross. Jesus spoke to the criminal on the cross, and he said, truly today you will be with me in paradise. Be with me in paradise. You could also talk about Jesus speaking to the disciples. There are many rooms in my Father's house, or you know the way to the place I am going. Again, all linking us to this idea that there is a life after death. Now, this idea here, Jesus speaking to the criminal on the cross, it offers this promise of life after death, and it shows that even in our final moments, there is hope of eternal life with God. Different viewpoints there, different sources of evidence gone through quickly with you, all to use specifically for this statement, death is not the end, but plenty there for you for any question on heaven, hell, purgatory, life after death, the soul, and resurrection. As I say, if you want to see us answer this question fully, we have got a video for you from that, and we'll put the link on here for you.